If you're on a city water supply, it's a really good idea to run your water the day beforehand to give chemicals a chance to off-gas. If you're not, you can run them the same day and that's fine. In this situation, we're going to go with 30 liters of water for our brew in a bag brew today. Easy denominator is 5 here, just a vinegar thing. I like to keep around a measure. And again, our fermenter is 25 liters. So between the two of these, I get 30 liters total. Something to consider if you're brewing in the wintertime and your tap water is super, super cold, you can run it the night before and it's less you have to heat up the next day. So the setup for brew in a bag is super simple. We got the pot on top of the stove here. So we got our colander or strainer, and we put that face down. You might be thinking, why do I need that? Basically, its job is to keep this off of the burner so we can make mid-mash adjustments. So we got that in there. We don't need this in right now while we heat up the water. So let's go ahead and put our water in and start to heat it up to strike temperature. Okay, our plan is to mash at 66 or 67 Celsius. So we brought up the water to 69 to account for thermal loss due to the grains. The grains are at room temperature. We brought the whole operation outside because it is brutally hot in the apartment here, and we used a 3 kilowatt immersion heat stick. So we're up to 69 Celsius, like I mentioned, and we'll go ahead and we'll take our muslin here and drop it in the container. And you want to make sure it gets down to the bottoms and corners. Okay. Then you take your grain as quickly as you can. Put it in the pot. We're doing little carapils today, and I'll show you the recipe on Brew. We're doing a Saison. Some pills there. And spread that out so you don't get too many dough balls here. The goal is to get all the grain wet. Stir it in. It doesn't have to be feverish or anything. And some 2-row. And after you stir it in and you distribute the heat to the grains in the water, you're going to take a temperature reading. We're about on point here. I was looking for 66 to 67, and right now we're 66.6, so that's about perfect for this brew. So now that we've reached temperature, we're going to put the lid on and seal her up. If you're a little bit low, you could add emergency water. You could add, say, a half liter or a full liter of boiling water, and that would bring your temperature up. If you're a little bit high, you could add cold water to bring it down. Like I mentioned in other videos, for the first brew, it's really not that important. As long as you're hitting between 65C and 70C, 148F and 158F, you're going to make beer on the other end. It's just important to take notes so that way next time you can make adjustments to your mash temperature. So we're going to seal it up for 60 minutes, insulate the sides, maybe put a pillow on top, and we'll do a stir halfway through to redistribute the heat, and then we'll see you in 60 minutes and talk about how we continue. Okay, we're 30 minutes in. We're going to give this a stir to even out the temperature. And we'll take a quick temperature reading, just for our own records. We're at 65, so we've lost 1.5 degrees, but that's fine, no problem. We'll put the lid back on, seal it up, and we'll come back in 30 more minutes to lift the bag. Okay, we're back 30 minutes later, and we're done with our mash. Give it a quick stir. Take another temperature reading. We're at 64, so we lost 2.5 C over the hour, and completely acceptable. Now what we're going to do is separate the grains from the water, and in the brew in the bag system, this is super easy. Make sure you got all the edges of the bag. And just lift it so a lot of the wort falls out of the bag. And then over the strainer, keeping it up so it falls into the pot. After we do this, after most of the water's down, we can take this, squeeze it, use the top of the lid to get a majority of the liquid out. Then we'll start the boil. Now that we've pretty much squeezed out every bit of wort from this, we're going to discard the grains, and we're going to take a pre-boil gravity reading. So, grains off to the side here. And you want to make sure that you stir the wort to kind of redistribute the sugar so you get an accurate gravity reading. Something to note is that you can't actually take a reading in here. If you were to drop your hydrometer in here at 155 F, it might break it. So what we do is take a small saucepan, anything with some thermal mass, grab about 6 to 8 ounces of wort. You'll take that off to the side, cool it down to room temperature, and then you can take an uncalibrated hydrometer reading. We got this stirred up. Now we need to put our heat source back on it, which might be your stovetop or your immersion heater. And when we get it up to boil, we'll take it from there. As the wort comes to a boil, we're going to take our pan of wort, cool it down, and hopefully take a hydrometer reading. And we can only take a hydrometer reading when it's down to room temperature. Otherwise, we run the risk of breaking the instrument. So a nice little water bath works well. In the summer, when your tap water isn't all that cool, you can put some ice in to help out. So stir this down for a couple minutes and threw some ice in around it. Take a reading, and we are down to 20 Celsius or 68 F, which is perfect for a reading. So we'll discard this and put it in a tall glass or a beaker here and fill it up until it floats. So we take the pre-boil reading just to kind of see where we are in the brew process. For example, we are at 1030, 1.030, and our predicted gravity was 1044. So we're well short, but we also have the benefit of boiling off liquid, like boiling down a soup. You get more concentrated flavors. Depending on if we boil down 5 liters or 1.25 gallons, we might make up 25% of that. So we're going to be in the neighborhood of the high 1030s, low 1040s, which is about what we predicted. In that case, if you were well short of your predicted gravity, you might back off on the hops so you don't overbitter. That said, if you were over your predicted gravity, you might add more hops to balance it out, or you might simply water down your final product to kind of reach an equilibrium. Now that we know our gravity reading, we can go to our software, we can put it in, and let's go ahead and check on our boil. Okay, following our recipe, we determined that at 60 minutes we're going to do a small dose of Magnum hops. This is only 12 grams. Remember, we are making a session Saison, so as soon as we put these hops in, we start our watch at 60, because we're only going to add hops at the end of the boil. And now you start your watch, and we'll see you in 60 minutes. So we just turned off our flame, and we added our last hops, and now we have to cool down our wort. We have two choices. We can do it in a sink if our sink were big enough, but I have a tub that works just fine. Sink isn't big enough, unfortunately. At this point forward, we need to make sure that everything that contacts the wort is sanitized. So let's go ahead and chill this down. So we've got our wort in our water bath here, and we're cooling that down. We refresh it every time it gets hot, and we stir this at the same time. Over here on the side, we've got a fermentor with sanitizing solution in here. Our tool's ready to go. Because at this point, because we're post-boil, everything needs to be sanitized that touches the wort. Depending on if it's the summer or the winter time, the winter it takes a lot less time because your tap water is cooler. In the summer, it seems to take a lot more time because tap water is a lot hotter. In this case today, we're lucky because we're making a Saison. We're going to pitch our yeast at about 25 to 27 Celsius. So I'll rejoin you as soon as I'm done with this. Ordinarily, I would take the hydrometer reading in the pot because it's very still right now. I can get a good reading, but this pot is a little too short for that. So I'm going to pour it in here. You can put this up higher and rack do a siphon from here to there, but I want to keep it simple today, so I'm even eliminating the hose. So here we go. We hit volume just about perfect. And I'm going to let this foam kind of cool down, and then we'll take a hydrometer reading and we'll be finished for today. Okay, the foam in the wort has simmered down enough where we can take a decent starting gravity reading. So we take our sanitized hydrometer, we drop it down. And it's looking right about 1040. A little bit short of what we predicted, but that's a-okay. So since we boiled for an hour, we drove a lot of the oxygen out of suspension, so we need to re-aerate it. You can aerate it by pouring it in like I did, or you can get a strainer and put it in here and it kind of makes it splash. You can get fancy gadgets and stuff, but just do the old shake for a minute here, and I'll rejoin you to pitch the yeast. Okay, just finished aerating for my minute here. Now we're going to pitch the yeast. We're making a Saison today, so ordinarily we would pitch maybe a dry yeast here in the situation where you'd open it up and you'd sprinkle it on top, but we're not doing that. We're doing something a little bit more advanced. This is a Saison starter. And I shook it up and resuspended the yeast. Smells just like a Saison. And we're going in. Seal it up for transport. We'll go ahead and put it in its water bath, and I'll join you then. Okay, so I just finished cleaning out my brew pot here. I filled it with about a third worth of water. Water out of our tap right now is about 25 Celsius, which is perfect for a Saison. So I moved this in here, got it filled with water. You might be noticing a lack of airlock. I like to go without an airlock simply because it's another piece to get infected. It's another place to kind of knock something off. So I just take it and I crack it open a little bit. That's enough space for the CO2 to get out and to keep everything else from getting in. If you're super paranoid, you can grab a jar or a spray bottle of your favorite sanitizer and spray the outside. Fermentation temperature is key for the first 2 to 3, 4 days. So you want to keep your thermometer handy. Check your water bath, make sure it's within range. If it's too hot, pour a little bit of cool water in or some ice. If it's too cool, heat it up. Otherwise, resist the urge to check the gravity for the first 7 days. If it's fermenting, it's doing its job, don't worry about it. That's when we introduce bacteria and infection to the scenario. The next time I see you, be 7 to 10 days later, and we'll be kegging this. It's been 13 days since we made Stephen's beer, and we're going to check on the final gravity here. There's no significance to 13 days, just when we got back to it. So we've got the beer here, the Saison, and remember in the brew log we came in at 1040, so we're curious as to what it's going to finish at. We've got our hydrometer here, it's in sanitizer, and some guys like to take a portion of it and measure it in there, just the same. I've got 5 gallons here in which I can measure it, and because we can't return the portion back to the beer, I like to do it in here as to not waste. Smells beautiful, and we're looking at 10:04, which is perfect for the Saison. So we've got the green light. We can go ahead and keg this, and we'll enter this in the brew log. See you there.